welcome to another edition of By the Numbers, the CSGO edition, of course, thanks to Alphadraft, and I'm your host, Richard Lewis. With me, as always, it is Duncan Thorin Shields, the other half of the package, and we just got back from DreamHack Winter. Which,
AKA FACEIT Stage 3.
Yes, indeed. And I might refer to it that way. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention.
A lot of work in FACEIT events, Rich. They're brilliant.
Yeah, enjoy those. Enjoy those a lot.
Respect the FACEIT staff a lot. Yeah. Good people.
Well, I mean, look, so there's no...
Many of them not even from the Nordic region, believe it or not, actually ethnically rich. So my kind of people.
So, I mean, obviously, there's one incident that is going to overshadow proceedings. I imagine people will want to talk about it. But ultimately, I think there's no point in dwelling on it any longer. I've said my bit. DreamHack has said their bit. Lotus said his bit. Everyone's had their 2 cents. So obviously there is content out there if you want to get into the minutiae of it. I published an article over at Breitbart. I did the Unfiltered show last night, which you can find in EnVyUs YouTube channel. And I certainly don't want to bore all of the By the Numbers viewers who are here to listen to CSGO discussion with something that really has nothing to do with CSGO. But what I will say is obviously there will be some questions that some people might have. And I think we're okay to maybe delve into some of those. So I think the first thing is to clarify, yeah, I mean, it does look like it's going to be my last DreamHack. It could well have been the case that was how it was going to be anyway. Certainly the incident cemented that deal in not a very pleasant way.
Does that last forever, though, do you think? Like, isn't this the sort of thing? Think about how short a year is, though.
Mm. Well,
like, yeah. In esports, it seems like a short amount of time in real life, a year. But a year in esports is like 20 events, So a year would be a whole DreamHack. You don't think it's ever possible that this could be?
Well, look. Here's the thing. I think if it hadn't got into this big public, kind of battle to control the message, which I'm as guilty of as anyone else. It would have been a lot easier to kind of maybe mend fences at a later date. I think with what Hellspawn kind of did, obviously I'm not particularly thrilled about it. I thought basically it's like I said last night in Unfiltered. I felt like everybody was writing the paragraph and all I added was the full stop, and that seemed to upset everybody. And up until that point, I obviously had a lot of abuse, a lot of harassment. Some of it's deserved. I think some of it's a bit over the top. But that was dying off. And then, I wrote an article kind of trying to make light of the situation and just be like, look, what's done is done. Obviously, DreamHack and me probably aren't going to work together again. I respect that decision. They've got image to think about. They've got, the matter of the fact that this is a venue that has to be able to guarantee the safety of everyone who attends. If my actions are perceived, danger to that safety, then obviously you can't have me in the venue. And certainly if you can't have me directly affiliated with the company. But I thought it was all done and dusted. And then obviously it flared up again. And the last 24 hours, 30 hours or so have been, even more ridiculous. I was down filming a pilot show, and obviously it did impact on my performance a little bit as well. So kind of just feels like the best thing to do is just draw a line under it and put it all behind us. And I don't think a year can fix it. And I don't even think that DreamHack at this stage particularly want to fix it. I think I've got a perceived grievance. I'm sure they've got a perceived grievance. I'm sure we feel let down on both sides.
Yeah, but that's why I don't understand, though, because here's the thing. Put it this way. If you don't do DreamHack as the host, then who did they get as the host? Host is literally the hardest job in esports to find someone to do, because there's no one with experience who also has on-camera ability and then who knows a bit about CS. There's very few people. I mean, I only know you, Scoots, I think Duffer did it one event. I did like a Star Ladder or something. Let me think. Who else has even done it? I think Semler might have done it a long time ago when I did DreamHacks, like in 2014. I don't even think I can think of anyone else. Okay, BSL, the first major, that was a long time ago. That's like November 2013. There's almost no one else. I mean, aside from ESL people who, unless they're now going to allow them to work for DreamHack, I don't see how it can work. Because obviously Machine works for ESL. I mean, can you think of anyone on a shortlist who would be a host?
I definitely could, actually, and far be it from me to find my own replacement and help people out. But the first name that would spring to mind is definitely Sadikist. I think he is more than capable of being a desk host. I think actually when he's been doing on-stage interviews and that kind of thing, it's really shown that he's got a bit of versatility, a new dimension that maybe some commentators don't have. Whatever people might think the deficiencies in his commentating are, I think he could really do a great job as a desk host. Now, the other obvious one is Chobra, who I think has a degree of polish that I would probably never have.
For them, even though he works for ESL?
I think the MTG acquisition would make it easier. So I don't know if it's a factor, but equally what I would say is they are two distinct brands and they want to keep that identity. So maybe that doesn't work out. Then we get into these are the two kind of outliers. But I think they would absolutely do a great job. So I've got to say a resounding, now's the time for Smix to come into CSGO, and instead of doing stage hosting, I know enough about her and her requisite talents that she could be an incredible desk host. She can keep conversations going. I mean, one of the things people don't realize about hosting a desk is it's just effectively a series of short interviews done under duress, like with a very strict time limit. That's effectively what you're doing. Smix knows all about that, so she could definitely do it. And then this is perhaps the outlier, but it's in a way the one I would like to see the most, and that would be Apollo from StarCraft 2. Sean is one of the best British broadcasting talents we've produced in the outside of the Quad V era. And look, we all know the way StarCraft's going. He's always said he'd go down with the ship, but this is a guy that I think he could easily step up to the plate and do an amazing job. So I think any of those four would be more than competent and could even do a better job than me.
Nah, the big problem there is, okay, Sadikist, I'll give you that one. I haven't seen him do much hosting, but okay, I could certainly see that he could do it. I know there have been events where they didn't necessarily have a dedicated host and he maybe played that role. Okay, that's fine. He has the knowledge, obviously, of the game, knows all the players. Every other name you listed there, I don't know anything about how much they know about CSGO, but I'd go ahead and guess not enough to be a really good host at the moment. Like maybe they could grow into the role, okay, but that's another area where people who are just plebs don't know anything about production. They'll go, oh, well, all you do as a host is ask questions. No. If you waste people's time asking the wrong question in a short segment, you will waste everyone's time, because either the analyst has to do like what I would do if someone did that, which is I'd go, well, actually what I want to talk about is this, and I would take it the way I was going to talk anyway. Most people wouldn't do that on a desk. Someone like Maniac, if you ask Maniac the wrong question, say you said to Maniac, oh, why are Fnatic like struggling on T-sides when they're like a fantastic T-side team? He'll probably try and answer that question. He'll spend the 5 minutes trying to explain, trying to help you out even. He won't want to throw you under the bus, So there's a bit more nuance to it than people think. Like I always think of this. When you're an interviewer, in theory, yes, you don't have to know what the person's going to say, but you have to kind of roughly know the area they're going to go in to take them to the area, and then they do the answering of the question, So the problem I've seen in the past, I've seen this on ESL broadcasts, actually, when Machine first started doing it, and when I've seen Chobra definitely have this issue, is that sometimes they would try to come up with the question like that, whereas they probably, while they're learning the game, should Machine admittedly now has done a lot more games, but in Chobra's case, coming from radically different games, he should have probably kept the questions a bit more open-ended. Sometimes he would kind of ask a more specific question, and to me it made the segment not as good. So I think those people could probably grow into it, assuming they have they're allowed to do a bunch of events, but I don't think they're just going to come in on event one and it's going to be great.
Yeah, no, I agree, but here's the problem. When anything occurs and you have to transition, staff out and replace people, there is always going to be a rough period. I mean, people are going to have to be patient, I'd say, for future DreamHacks and let them find somebody that can get on the desk and do a good job. I think, there's definitely people who could do it. I mean, we haven't even.
I've got one more issue for you.
Yeah,
here's
go
one
on.
more issue. You okay? So again, when you presented that list of names, I can see one problem immediately. Aside from Apollo, every one of those names resides in the USA. So every event that's not in the USA, they're going to pay a transatlantic plane ticket. Now, everyone watching this might think, what's the big deal there? No. DreamHack are one of the events who are one of the biggest events in the world. They, in the past, haven't paid the most money for fees. So if they're going to pay someone's transatlantic flight compared to a flight from the UK, what are they just going to make that difference up in the fee? Are they just going to pay more expenses? In which case, why were we getting less? I mean, this doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is something that started to come to the forefront in terms of talent, which is that there are orgs which want to call themselves industry leaders, the biggest orgs, and then they're paying under the rate of other orgs. And this never gets out in public because to most people, if it's their full-time job, it's suicide. They think to go and say this, but I'll say it. I don't care if some of these people don't hire me again. And by the way, some of these people are in a position where if they don't hire me, I'll reveal that I gave them discounts in the past and then they didn't make good on it in the future, So, I mean, it's not quite as simple as people might think in terms of replacing that. That's why, to me, it's not a big, it is a big deal, rather, if events don't have the right talent, because it's not as simple as just hiring this person and this person, this person. It's very hard to put together good desks.
I mean, look, I can't fault DreamHack for saying they don't want to work with me again and wanting to make that public. And, I obviously tweeted what I tweeted as well, saying it was going to be hard for me. It was going to be hard. It was going to be like, a bump in the road in a marriage. That isn't to say it was time for the divorce, but it was going to take some work. But I can respect their decision.
Sure, but that's basically the premise of what I was setting up there. Was the reason why I asked you could it ever be fixed is because I don't see this as something that they on their hand. Okay, I understand why they might not want to work with you. That's fine. They can make that decision. That's their discretion anyway. They can choose not to work with anyone. But I don't think it's like, and they can not work with you, and then tomorrow, next event will just be fine, and there'll just be this smooth transition. I think there's going to be they're going to have to do something drastic if they want to revamp their. Because remember, their whole vibe that they were going for, and they've told us this many times, was to be the outsider one and the edgy one, the alternative to the buttoned up suits. Well, most of the people you're naming aren't going to come in with sick banter. I'll tell you that right now. Maybe Sadikis could, I admit.
Yeah, I think Sadikis could. I mean, look, so obviously that makes me feel bad because, everything that's gone on, and not just at this event, but at other events, whenever there's like this maelstrom of stress and chaos going on behind the scenes, the last thing I've ever wanted to do is impact negatively on a show. And I've never wanted anything to come across and affect the viewers. And that was why even with all of this going on, and there was maybe talk I wouldn't be allowed to finish the show, I wanted to go on and finish the show and close up the show, even though it was very much in the back of my mind that it was going to be the last one. So the idea now that DreamHack might have to go through a rough period and replace me and maybe it kind of throws them off balance, obviously, and it could affect. I'm not saying it will, but it could affect on the show. Obviously, that does make me feel bad because the last thing I wanted any of this nonsense to do was kind of impact on people at large. It's just regrettable on my part that it's kind of come to that. But of course,
Rich, in football, if you headbutt someone in the face, you get like 3 games suspension or something. You don't get kicked out of football forever and never allowed to play for that football club again. I don't know why. Why is this the crime of the century? Did I miss the part where you pulled out a samurai sword, chopped his arm off, and then did voodoo magic so you can never have children? What was the crime here? I don't understand.
Well, look, obviously, even I can say certainly this is the one instance I think people are allowed to use my trigger word. It definitely wasn't a professional
certainly
moment.
not. Obviously not.
And as well as I do, that all of the stress and stuff that was going on at the time. You come into an event, you're not sure whether you're going to get jumped or not. It was a little bit. I definitely didn't handle it right. My head was all kind of fucked up, and I just lost my cool. But I agree. But I don't know if it's like I said in my article. I think there's a bit of cultural stuff going on here. I think me and you maybe don't have a global perspective on stuff like this because we're, you know,
no, because we're
in the north of
compassionate people. Like, I don't believe that if someone grabs someone's neck, then they are forever like a forbidden person who is now the devil, can never be redeemed. Their soul must go to hell, and we can never associate with them because they're worse than ISIS. Like, no, that's not society. Like, are they actually trying to have a society in the Scandinavian region? Or is this some sort of fucking, like, are you kicked out of the Matrix now? What's going on?
Yeah, no, I get it, man. I look, but that isn't the argument, you know, I want to get into, and I don't want to. I definitely don't want to labor the point. Obviously, I'm disappointed it's come to this. Obviously, I can only really blame the way that I acted. I had hoped that maybe down the road, myself and DreamHack could have ironed things out, but obviously that's not going to happen. And I certainly had a lot of good memories with DreamHack. I've certainly, I owe them a little bit in terms of they were the first company under the Mad King Robert Olin that gave me an opportunity to even be a desk host. So I wouldn't be hosting anywhere had they not took that risk. And even at the time, it was a risk. I was like, are you guys fucking sure you want to do this? So,
well, I'm sure with all the mad money they've made back off your mate's rate for them, where they would have had to pay someone else more money who's worse, I'm sure they can feel entirely like that was even Stevens at this point.
Well, you know, look, again, there's no, as long as that's the end of it, and we're not going to get into next week, there's another fucking twit longer from another DreamHack employees, but wanting to kind of dogpile on and just keep this sort of ridiculous level of abuse, you know, going on. You know, yep, fucked up. Shouldn't have done what I did. Pretty much accept that. Do I think it's as bad as what's being made out? No. Do I want to? Do I think the community have had their pound of flesh? Well, absolutely. I've been shit on for 5 days. I've had lots of threats. I'm going to compile them all. I've certainly been castigated. Obviously, I don't get to do DreamHacks anymore, which, as you know, it was always a cool thing to do a DreamHack because of the guys that were there. So, for that's that for me. I think I've paid the price for a flash of stupidity. But the question that everyone's going to ask, Duncan, is, everyone talks about the package. Now, what people don't realize is when I use the term package deal, that wasn't that it was a two-way street. Like, Duncan didn't know about that. Duncan wasn't complicit in that. It wasn't like I said that me and him sat down one day and went, hey, the show by the numbers is going well. Do you want to be a package and take it to the next level? And we blushed coyly and, we started eating spaghetti and our mouths met. It wasn't like that, right? That would be creepy as fuck.
Well, Rich, I mean, I know better than to go really close to your face, so I know better than some people, So.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Sick bands, top bands. So anyway, the question everyone's going to ask, of course, is, what it means for you in a DreamHack. And I just want to be clear. I'm not going to say to you, don't do a DreamHack. I'm not going to get upset if you decide to do a desk for them. The package deal was pretty much predicated on the fact that I don't want to work for a company that flat out won't hire you. So do you have any clarification for your fans?
I mean, here's the thing. One thing we never actually did talk about, because it was never an issue, was when you originally presented that idea to me, it was the idea that I think you even said, like, specifically, what you wanted of ESL is that I should do their majors. Now, at no point in time did we ever say, I have to do ESL, ESE Pro League. The idea was majors are something special, which are the biggest events. And so no matter who runs them, we want to have the best talent in CSGO there. And that means whether you like someone or they don't like someone, ideally, if you can work with them, you would work with them. So I thought that was the notion, okay. So I'm not sure whether you meant it to involve all the ESL events, because I don't know if they ever tried to get you for the smaller ones, if you would have done those. We never actually discussed that. In terms of going on to the DreamHack thing, it will definitely affect my decision as to whether I work with them again, because it's definitely in the back of my mind. Like, for example, it's brought up the factor that, well, now I have no idea who the host is going to be. It's obviously all the people you've listed there. Okay, I know Sadakist a bit. I know Chobra personally, but I don't know him in any way professionally. I've never worked with him. I barely know Apollo at all, and I don't know Smix at all. So automatically, if I work with almost any of those people, it's going to be a less enjoyable event. And I think I'll probably not do as good work myself because I won't have the same chemistry with someone where they're going to get good answers out of me, or I know, for example, that if they go to someone else first, they're going to come back to me in the right amount of time. You know, a lot of these factors people take for granted. I mean, the number of times I've seen an analysis desk where they go to one person, go to another person, then they go, sorry about that, we're going to have to go to the break now. And the third person might have been sat there the whole time with a wicked point, and they never get to it, you know, because that's the thing you build up. You kind of figure out who's got what and when to go to them. So just in terms of professionally, I think it will be a worse show if I work for DreamHack now. In terms of the chemistry aspect, people don't realize that's one of the major reasons I do events now. It's very rare you'll see me do an event where there's not someone there who's like a mate of mine, whether that's like you, let me think who else. Obviously, Anderson Sembler, Henry G, Scoots. These are my main people. I've got, okay, some of the others, you know, I'm getting to know still. I don't mind some of them. Some of them are becoming friends on the outside, but it's way better to do an event with your mates because obviously every second you're not on camera, you're also getting to talk to them. You've got someone you know to talk to in the green room or to have dinner with. It's not as much fun when you're like meeting someone for the first time, etc. And people might think, why would this affect anything? That affects a lot how much you enjoy the event. That's the reason why when we're at events, I go so mad at DreamHack to make the small things nice, you know, make it so we've got a nice, you know, set of food for us and drinks coming, because even the little things like that enhance the experience of being there. So I had already actually planned for next year. I think I already said this like halfway through this year, actually. I said I want to do less events. Like I've already done more than I expected to. I did 17 events this year. That's way too many for me. I want to be a full-time journalist. This is supposed to be something I do on the side and for the good of the game. So ideally, I want my number to be more about 10. I mean, that's taking into account, I don't know what's going to happen with these long televised leagues. But if we had the same circuit we had now, I would do 10 events. So that means already I can't do every circuit. Like I can't do, for that, I couldn't do all the majors, all the DreamHacks, all the Gfinities, all the FACEITs. Like I would already be over the 10. So I'm already going to have to pick some I would trim. Now, in the past, I planned to trim either the events that didn't have very good teams there, because, I mean, who wants to go and watch a small tournament anyway? Yeah. Or I would have to pick a circuit and just stop doing it. So that would depend on what my relationship was like with that circuit. Now, here's the sad thing. In the past, I always told everyone who was talking about like casting for 2016, right? Well, the first two people I'll definitely lock in is I'll go to Gfinity, I'll go to DreamHack, and I'll say, listen, we're going to work together because you've always been very good to me. We've always had like a good relationship. I've always felt like, you know, I know the money's going to come. Well, that's kind of ruined a bit over the last few DreamHack events. It's not just this one either. At the last few, there have been a lot of the weird issues that never existed before, but have become more of a concern. And part of it is like that casters are wising up to the fact that it's not 2013 anymore, and we shouldn't be happy with just getting some money and working 15 hours a day and having all the things go to shit, which was the de facto standard before. So it's not that I don't know if I'll do DreamHack yet. I haven't decided yet. Obviously, the first event's still a while away, but put it this way, since it will be less enjoyable, those factors that will help me determine whether to do it are going down. And there is a part of me, I don't know if I'll get over it in a few weeks or what, but there is a part of me that thinks if it comes down to DreamHack and another event that have similar criteria, I'll probably just pick the other event, because what reason at the moment would I have to go to DreamHack? They're not mates of mine anymore.
You know, it's a shame. And again, just to be clear, I've said this, you know, I don't want anybody to make any knee-jerk decisions, but based on what is, you know, my actions, you know, my act of stupidity. So I guess we'll see what happens moving forward. But I thought it was important to clear it up. Now, I think, unless there's anything else relating to the incident, we can actually get on and talk about the tournament, which is what I would much rather be doing. Have you got anything else, or are we cool to move on?
No, but I do think if you go forwards, like the point I referenced before with the hosting thing, as much as people might think to themselves, oh, well, you know, events will be fine at DreamHack without us if we don't do it, etc., etc. You say that now, but when you've seen a whole year's worth of events, and unfortunately, a lot of the people they replace us with will be really professional. They might even know a lot about the game. It won't be the same flavor. That's the thing. What I think we've done a good job in is branding like a unique flavor to what we do in our particular way of doing it. So as far as I know, there aren't people who do that exact specific thing. Now, listen, I could get you a desk with 4 analysts that are all experts on strategy in the game. you know what? That will not be a good desk. That's not because strategy is boring. It's because if you're 4 people, you probably want one to be super strategical, one to have a bit of the strategy going in there, one to be someone who knows the players, one to be someone who's going to do general overview stuff, because that way you tell the story as you go through. Like, you notice when we do the desk, if I say some details about, and this is what happened in this roster move, the next person to talk doesn't go, yes, and I also want to make my thoughts about that roster move. They go into their speciality, you know, like, oh, and yes, like, you know, like one of the things I thought worked really well at this last DreamHack actually was, at this one, Yank actually seemed to have a really good synergy with me. Actually, I didn't know it at the time, but what he would always do was, because he had a million things he could make a point about. If I made a point and then I finished, he would go, yeah, actually. And what he's talking about there on the 5th round, we saw that happen. And that's the way he would go into it. So it made it really seamless, actually. For someone who's barely done any events, it was quite a professional vibe to it, you know, and he managed to kind of build in his own synergy there, where obviously we didn't have pre-existing synergy, because it's like the second desk I've ever done with him at a reasonably big event, you know. So I think there will be definitely a transition period, no matter who does DreamHacks next year in that sense.
Yeah, and I hope Yanko and Maniac especially do get some more opportunities to do some desks, because I think they're a brilliant addition to what was already a strong crop of analysts and experts. Yeah, I mean, I thought Yanko had kind of a bit of a breakout performance at this one in terms of how well he performed, and obviously he's going to get better. You know, we talked about it backstage, giving him a little bit of feedback, maybe dial down his descriptive nature in terms of what happens in a round by 10, 15%. And I think you've got a perfect analyst. So looking forward to seeing how he develops, and certainly hope that...
Like, the thing is, what Yank could do that I don't think anyone else can actually do, in terms of, I've watched a lot of the really good ones, is like, even the people, okay, so if you listen to Henry or Sadikis talk, yeah, they will talk strategy, but what they tend to do is they will reference like rounds that they've seen that were a similar strategy in the past. Like, okay, I see what they were running. There was a game they ran online actually against TSM, and this time they had a little twist to it. What Yank could do, or Yanko rather, that I don't think anyone else could actually do, is if you gave him like one of those things that like football commentators have, where the pundit can actually go through one play and he stops it and he circles it and goes, watch where this guy comes in. If he just didn't try to break down 10 rounds and he had that technology, he would do what they do in football, which is you break down the 2 key plays that really show you how the offense was working, or like what was happening with one player that wasn't working. He's a bit out of sync with the rest of the team. He could break that play down probably better than anyone I've seen, because this is a guy where, I mean, I know this guy watches demos for fun. Like, he's just going back home and watching all the demos for events he's not at. So he's getting a mad level of knowledge of like how the teams, what the dynamic is. Whereas a lot of the other people, even people who are very good in-depth information, their information is coming from a different area. That's what I love about analysis, actually. There's so many analysts, but the very few of them are the exact same mold. A lot of it, like, you can put them in general categories, but a lot of people have like different specialties. And I think that's great if you can mix up the specialties, because you get a more rich meal, as it were.
And that we definitely need that just in general at CS events. I think, you know, you see it in League of Legends, where they have the touch screen and they you know, can highlight a play and rewind it and fast forward and explain specifically. I think we need to get these tools in CS so we can actually take analysis to the next level. Because at the moment, an analysis desk, you're right, it generally seems to be a blend of placing a play, a team in some sort of historical framework, talking in generalities about where they went right or wrong, and then maybe bringing in a pro to kind of add an extra layer of tactical or mechanical understanding to why we've ended up the result that we've had. I think if you can actually start bringing some fucking you know, technology to the table and actually going through even really tiny specific parts of a play, I think this is what's going to help people have a much better understanding and kind of enrich the broadcast. So hopefully someone will fork out the money and head towards that, like Riot Games did for their LCS. Anyway, let's put all that to bed and let's start talking about the games. So it was a crazy tournament. Probably's had more shocks and upsets and strange results than any other tournament I've seen for a long, long time. I'm not going to talk too much about individual results. I'm going to talk about teams and their attendance. I guess the big shock really isn't Luminosity. It's EnVyUs and just what happened to them at this tournament. You know, for EnVyUs to go, having won the major, they lose to NIP on Mirage, and then they lose a best of 3 to Luminosity, who, of course, had been 16-0'd on the first day. This wasn't something that you would predict. And indeed, they only won one map the entire time they were there. And unsurprisingly, it was Cobblestone. So what's gone wrong with EnVyUs? What can we glean? Because to crap out in last place is what? It's unforgivable, right?
Certainly. I mean, I made this point on the broadcast. You want to talk? Okay, so how everyone was characterizing EnVyUs now was, will it be their era? Will they be the dominant team? Will they be the team who, every tournament they're going to either win the event or you have to beat them to win the event? The problem is, when you look at the teams who've been like that in the past, none of them ever during their dominant phase finished last place in a tournament. It's never happened. NIP never did it. Fnatic never did it. The old Very Games never did it when they were in absolute God mode. In general, this doesn't happen. It's extremely rare. And so you look at it and you start to break down what was going on there. Well, first and foremost, you have to look at the maps. And I already said there was some holes in the EnVyUs map pool, but man, this was really disappointing the way this tournament went. I mean, remember, Mirage was a map that they were kind of getting into the middle of their map pool, and they were trying to figure out, like, we'll play it against lesser teams, and it's like they were priming themselves to play it against the Virtus.Pros and TSMs of the world. Well, they played it twice here, lost to Luminosity, lost to NIP, and didn't get over 8 rounds in both those games. So it almost feels like that map's out the window immediately. So there's one problem for you. As we've already mentioned before, they always ban overpass. It's always going to be overpass or train they're going to have to worry about. They didn't even have to play it in this tournament, and still they went out in last place. So that's concerning there. It's not like you went to your worst map that you never played. No, you never had to play it. And the decider against Luminosity was the most disappointing because they played Inferno. Inferno was supposed to be the second strongest map of EnVyUs. Okay, Cobblestone's their home map. Then Inferno's the map where they're beating everyone. They can beat Fnatic. They can beat TSM. They can beat everyone in Inferno. Well, at this tournament, they lose to Luminosity. And yes, it was one of Luminosity's better maps with the old lineup, but it's a brand new lineup. This isn't a team that's probably ever going to win a major. In fact, I can just go ahead and say that. They're not going to win a major. So losing on your second best map here, there's something gone really wrong at this point in time. And what I really did not like is that, at the end of the tournament, Happy was statistically one of the best players in the tournament.
Counterstrike stats are fucked, though. Honestly,
it's bad, isn't it? It's bad.
Yeah. No, listen. I've said this a million times. The stats that we use as a metric, right? I think the only one that's even vaguely important is frags, and even those are deceptive. Yeah. I think things like headshot ratio, I think it's fucking useless. I think they just don't really. They're like the icing on the cake. For me, the stats need to be things like how many entry kills did you make? How many impact frags did you make? Like time between kills. People need to think a bit more outside the box and bring statistics that tell a story about who is truly performing to the table. Kills absolutely do not do that. And to link this point into talking about Happy, this is the first time I've ever been inclined to agree with you about Happy. I always think you've been too hard about him when you say, he's not tactically gifted, or he does bait his team, or he uses his position as an in-game leader in an almost abusive fashion to enable himself to statistically look good. But some of these rounds where he was the last alive were absolutely ridiculous. And then you throw into it the conceit of taking an AWP away from Kenny S. I don't know what this guy was thinking at this event.
I mean, Kenny S wasn't actually terrible with a rifle this event. It's just that you look at it and you go, well, when you're going to be at your best is when he has the AWP. So the big problem here is, essentially, Happy is only allowed to succeed if the team succeeds, because he is both the in-game leader, the star player, and the lurker, all 3 roles in one. So I'm sorry, when Happy gets a +20 in a series and loses, that's not like Kenny S going ham in Titan and Titan being a terrible team and losing. No, because the team was not built so that everything ran through Kenny S and that he could bait everyone else. Like, that's one of the things that's one of the biggest misunderstandings of the Kenny S era of Titan, okay, was that everyone set everything up and he got the kills, and then, that's his job. No, he was entry fragging on T side sometimes. He was the second or third guy in with an AWP. He was never the lurker. If you're the lurker, you can get the easiest kills in the game. Not least because someone like Happy, you'll notice actually, this isn't usually a problem with the way they play because he does it normally in the correct situations, but he's one of the most happy players to save a gun in the entire game. He will literally wait in a 2v4 scenario, wait for his teammate to die and go, right, I'm saving this gun. So as a result, he dies extremely few times. He's in scenarios that are 1v3s where he's saving and he can get 1 or 2 kills, but had no chance to win the round. That is how you pad stats. That is famously how greedy players pad stats. Problem is, if you're the in-game leader, eventually you've got to identify that something else is going wrong in the team. And you can't just keep playing that role by yourself. I mean, this is the issue I've always had with him, which is that when you're off on one side of the map and your team's on the other side, if everything goes great, again, I can't give you mad credit. Okay, you set things up. But when things go badly, you don't want to take any of the blame. Well, which is it? Do you want the credit or do you want the blame? Because if you get the credit for setting those guys up where you can't see them and they execute the strat, well, then when it goes to shit, you also have to take some kind of blame. Now, I don't give you the blame there. Here's the funny thing. I don't blame you for not being able to see when they're on the other side of the map. Because guess what? You did fuck all there, mate. You were sat in banana while they went in through boiler. But here's the thing. I also don't give you credit the other way as a result. I don't give you credit for Shocks running in and banging someone's head off with 2 bullets. You didn't make him do that, mate. You didn't set anything genius up there. You might have roughly positioned them like, hey, when he goes in, follow him up. But that's not the same as some of the tactics that some of these other guys are doing where it's really in-depth and they're trying to read the game. And also, I have to say, EnVyUs as a team throughout their entire history, even go back to when they formed as LDLC, they've always had a tendency to just brute force things on T-side. And they've had so much skill, they could make it work. But that's not tactical depth. Tactical depth is you read what the opponent's doing, you figure out what you're doing is wrong. And sometimes, listen, if you're a genius, maybe you can come up with a new tactic on the fly. But usually it's having your playbook and just rotating what tactic you do. So, okay, this one's not working out here. Don't keep trying it over and over and throw more rounds away. We go to this one instead. Sometimes, partly because he's not there to execute, I get the sense Happy just goes, right, just do that again. And just thinks, in his mind, I mean, he's almost like a witch doctor at this point in time. He's not there. He doesn't know what they're doing. He's just hoping that Kiyashima goes in and kills him. He's on superstitious levels at this point in time. So, and remember, it's not someone who goes back and reviews his own demos and goes, oh, what did we do wrong on that round? Just thinks next round it'll have to work right. So a lot of it is autonomous within EnVyUs as far as I can tell. Like individual players know their role. They're fantastic at their roles. It's up to them to play their role. And as a result, if you're the in-game leader doing this sort of stuff, in a game like this, it looks like you kind of just baited a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about impact kills, what did Happy's kills do to win his team the game there?
I don't know. Sorry, I think something bad is happening based on what's happening in the chat. What's wrong, Sam? Sam, are you with us? Hello. All right, we'll take a break and we'll come back to this question and we'll get this fixed. Oh, yep, 2 seconds. We'll be back very shortly. Help Happy's team. The obvious answer is that they don't. I mean, it was just a strange performance by EnVyUs. But here's the thing, we can stand here and criticize Happy and lambast him, and maybe rightly so. And certainly that was the weirdest performance I've ever seen from him. But I've got to say, the other guys didn't really show up either. It wasn't, the only person I really saw sort of having, kind of playing at a level that you would expect from an EnVyUs player, really, in drips and drabs. I mean, Kenny S, and he seemed to have a rifle a lot of the time this tournament. So I guess hats off to him for doing well despite being out his comfort zone. And MBK, and as much as I like the guy and never want to criticize him,
was dog shit.
Kiyashima was terrible this tournament. So I mean, what can you pinpoint why this might be the case? I
have to say, in this era of EnVyUs, Kiyashima has definitely struggled entirely. Like even when they've been on top winning, it's usually either Apex is the one who's getting all the entry frags, or Kenny S goes ham, or Happy goes well. Unfortunately, Kiyashima's seems now like the odd man out, which is weird because if you remember, one of the complaints of the old EnVyUs and why they were glad they got rid of Shocks is the idea that Shocks baited too much as his role as the second entry. He used to make Kyo go first, and then he'd kind of go in and try and ensure he got the trade frag, which is kind of like trying to abuse his old style and make it into an entry frag role. And so Kiyashima felt a bit hard done by. Like, I'm like the hard entry guy who has to go straight in and I'm going to get wrecked, Now, the funny thing is, bringing in Apex, that was supposed to alleviate Kiyashima because now he's got a guy who wants to go in first, who's going to work with him as a tandem. But all we've really seen is Apex does well, or at least decently well. He tends to have maps that he does very well. Kiyashima seems to be the one guy in the team who, even when things have been going well, has struggled. Like, I don't think he's found his place yet or figured out how to contribute. Now, he hasn't had to either, because they have been a fantastic team who've won a lot of tournaments, and they've got so many carry players. He doesn't ever have to carry, essentially. But when everything goes to shit, I think you saw here that it just emphasized how he's not in the game.
Yeah. So the follow-on question from this is, you go out, you turn up, you get beat by NIP, you lose a best-of-3 series to a new-look Luminosity, a team that had only been together by this point something like 48 hours. They literally played a best-of-1 and been 16-0'd as a team. That was the only result, and yet they managed to beat you in a best-of-3 series. So the next question is, do we have to worry? I think there was something off within EnVyUs at this tournament. They looked wretchedly miserable. They didn't seem to have any va-va-voom, dare I say it. They had no sort of... there was just nothing there. They didn't seem to have any fight whatsoever. And in fact, a lot of people brought this up on Twitter that, you shouldn't be too hard on them. And I wasn't going to mention this, but I guess at this juncture...
Who said that? Right, which fan said, don't be too hard on the world champs who go last place? Was that a fan who has ever said anything about Fnatic, about TSM? You know what happens, Rich, when TSM goes out of a tournament without winning the tournament? I get morons like, fucking faggot, you said TSM were good. They don't just go, oh, they had a bad tournament. It's funny how it's always fans of these teams who, oh, I want clemency for my team. Another team lost one game. They are fucking cunts. Like, great, you're a very reasonable character.
Well, yeah, but the thing I was going to go on to say was that, obviously we had the attacks in Paris, and people were saying, could this have affected a French treaty? Well, this is what people were asking. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but I guess after what happened to DreamHack, I can't really, it can't get any worse, right? So I may as well ask the question. I mean, it could that have been a factor? I mean, I could understand why it might affect people.
I mean, that seems like wild speculation to imagine that would be the particular incident there. That would be the problem.
Yeah, I agree. But I mean, I think like you said, when world champions do go out in last place, people need to explain it. And so far, all we've got is they played really badly, uncharacteristically so. And we can highlight the people who underperformed. I was trying to pick up on some body language stuff and just watching interactions. Things didn't seem normal. Things didn't seem regular. But in terms of an explanation for why it happened, everything was set up for EnVyUs to do well at this tournament, not just because they're the most skilled lineup currently in Counterstrike, not just because they're coming off the back of winning the major and they finally got one, or rather that particular lineup's finally got one under its belt. And also with the security issues surrounding the aftermath of the Paris attacks, obviously they didn't go to San Jose. Obviously they weren't dealing with any jet lag. They should have come into this fresh, a lot fresher than some of the people they were playing. Luminosity, for example, they'd flown from like California to London, London to Sweden, like a day before they got there. So I can't. This is like one of the fucking freakiest anomalies I've ever seen in terms of a team doing this bad.
Yeah, and the problem with that one is I just don't buy it as a reason because, for example, like how long does that last for? Remember, it was quite a while ago those French attacks happened. Like, what was the date that happened on? Let's have a look. Paris attacks. It's got to be at least 2 weeks, if not more.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. Well, it's just before
November.
San Jose, wasn't it?
That was on the 13th of November. So, okay, if it lasts for 3 weeks or whatever, so does it account for in a couple of weeks from now when they go to ESL, ESEA? Is that going to explain why they do badly there? Here's the problem, right? Even if all those things are true, I actually have a theory about games, which is if you know that information, okay, you can take it on board. But in general, you can just look what happens in the server, and that is what will really tell you the problem. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter why Kenny S can't hit a certain shot. What matters is that he didn't hit a certain shot and what the knock-on effect of that is, and could they have done something differently? Could they have rotated him around a different spot? Could they have changed the weapon he's using? Could they have changed the map that they were playing? Now, one of the main areas I see as a massive problem for EnVyUs is, how can you be the best team in the world and have literally 2 maps you can't play? train an overpass. Every team who's good in the world right now can play overpass. Every single one. Na'Vi can play it. VP can play it. TSM can play it. Fnatic can play it. I think one of the only ones that doesn't play it is NIP, and they're the ones who are like bordering on not being an elite level team. So if EnVyUs wants to be bundled with them, they're in trouble already, aren't they? So everyone else who's a really world-class team has a wide map pool. Why has EnVyUs got such a slim one? Why are they losing now on even some of their home maps? That's a concern for me in terms of, like, here's the big problem. Because they're not a tactical team, I don't know what you changed in their team. Like, I don't think people think I'm like critical as a team. No, they're a fantastic team. But their limitations as a team are that because they've tried to stack their lineup with all-star players, and the thing about all-star players is they don't follow a script. They do what they need to do to get their kills. So you're almost at the mercy of that guy to turn up and play very well. Now, any idiot could go, well, that's what every team's like. No, it's not at all what it's like. Because a very tactical team, for example, can make adjustments, or they can still win around when a guy dies early on because the rest of the machine still works. For EnVyUs, I don't know what you do differently. You're the ones who've gone down this path and gone this extreme route where you're going to go that aspect. You can't then turn around and go, oh, but things aren't going well. Well, that's the price of being an awesome team, where when everything goes perfectly, you smash every other team. If you want to have that, this is the price you pay for it. The other teams, there's a path to success, and you can see when they're on it and the gradual improvement they make. I don't see that for EnVyUs. So I think this is going to be a bit like this from now on. I don't think they'll come last place. I think this was a massive anomaly, but I think there'll be tournaments where they just go out in the semi-finals unconvincingly. Next tournament, they come back, wreck everyone, and win the whole tournament.
Yeah, I certainly hope they don't get into that sort of Virtus.Pro mode where they've got all this fantastic potential. They could be a dominant team, but actually it just depends who turns up. Like, I would never want to see this EnVyUs play another tournament again. To see the names in that team play this poorly, I know it just doesn't bear thinking about. So the other team, I guess we'll talk about a little bit then, was, of course, one of the teams that beat EnVyUs, NIP, one of your favorite topics of discussion. And we've had some interesting kind of developments with NIP. Obviously, everybody knows at this point that they changed management. Certainly, it seems to have made for a better atmosphere with the NIP players. They were at the event. They were all smiling. Heaton was back there. They all seemed to be a bit more together, a bit more cohesive, a bit more of a unit. And, of course, they did get that win over EnVyUs. And it was a convincing win. 16-8 on Mirage. And just an amazing performance from Forest in that game. Then, obviously, you had El Clasico. They take on Fnatic. Fnatic beasted them 16-4. Started off a lot closer than the final score looked. Again, Forest, godlike in comparison to his teammates. And then, obviously, they came up against Luminosity. Now, this was a great series. Luminosity came out, started strong. Mirage is obviously back in their locker as a map for them. We'll talk about that in a moment. Goes to Cash. Looks like Luminosity are going to win. Ridiculous overtime. Clutch from Forest again. The man to drag it out. Then they win 21-19. At that point, it's on cobblestone. You think it's going to be up in the air, but in the end, it wasn't really close. But I saw a lot of positives from this NIP. Most notably, that recurring name, Forest, Get Right still one of the biggest stars in the game. Arlo, I thought, was up and down in his typical fashion, but his ups seemed a lot higher than they had been for a while. Is there a chance that NIP are going to be able to get themselves together? And if they do decide to stick together as a five, can they get back to some semblance of what they used to be?
I don't think so. Mainly because if you look at the way the scene is right now, there's just too many good teams. Like, a lot of the teams that are really good right now hadn't got their shit together back when NIP was the third or second best team in the world. Around that point in time, TSM was still the chokers. Na'Vi hadn't gotten flamey. VP was super up and down and was slumping a little bit. That's all changed now. These teams are all fantastic. So the problem for NIP is I see it being more of the same. Like, you can have events like this where it goes well, but even in a tournament where it's supposedly gone well, there were some big problems. Like, for example, so you beat EnVyUs on Mirage. Congrats. Then you just lose outright to Luminosity. Well, there's that map gone. I mean, was that supposed to be a strong map for us? Like, remember, I said the joke on stream that Alu told me, like, believe in us, like, we will win this map on Mirage. And then he just went and lost the next one. So if I'd believed him on the second one, I would have got that wrong as well. So either way, I could have only had a 50% win rate going by Alu's say. Now, next up, they lost the game on Cash, which remember they won the game on Cash very narrowly, but that was their map pick. That's not a map that Luminosity even played. That was one on the outside of their map pool, and they almost won that. If you remember, they were the ones who were leading for most of it, and that took a lot of clutch rounds to win that for NIP. So that's worrying in itself, because that could have been a 2-0. And then the Cobblestone game was just that wasn't even vaguely a competition right there at that point in time. You would have thought if it was about veteran experience, NIP should have been the ones who came out strong there. They survived the overtime session. They get to a third map. That's supposed to be where you've broken the hearts of the Luminosity guys and you come on strong. And actually, they were the ones who just faded away and had nothing over them. I'm going to say, in terms of players, for another tournament, Freiburg had a terrible tournament. I mean, I don't know how many times this has to happen before people can accept in their own mind that he has some issues going on here. And at the end of the day, remember, Rich, supposedly it was because of all the NIP problems that he's having all these problems. Well, that's all gone now, right? Everything's supposedly starting to get turned around there, starting to get fixed. So that's why I never bought the idea that excuse worked overwhelmingly. It could be in the background.
Yeah, I think Freiburg needs a new team. I think the only thing that's going to fix Adam at this point is a fresh start. New in-game leader, new ideas, new strats, new teammates around him doing different things. I think he's the guy that needs to move on if he's going to get back to his peak. Because, look, everything else really has been going much better for NIP. Get right. You can never really lay any criticism on his doorstep. Forest has been playing amazingly lately. I mean, really, really well. Like old Forest, not 1.6 Forest, but old CSGO Forest. I think Exist has really, really stepped up. I've been liking, some of the maps that Arlu's had. But it is this persistent, ongoing problem for Adam, and I think it's tough. And look, he's always said, much like I just did earlier, the stats we have obviously aren't a very good gauge of success. But equally, if you're told to do something in a team and you do it and you die in the process of doing it, but your team still wins the round, you're never going to get any credit for that. And there's never going to be a statistic that is going to show that.
Here's the thing. It's true. Stats as a general thing. No, I would say it's more like this. Here's when stats fail, when they're extremely specific. If it's one game and you look at one map and you only look at the stats, you won't get a very good sense of who did the best, who had the most impact kills. But make it a large enough sample size and make it extremely general and you will get trends. Like you go and look at the best statistical players of the ones who've played like 100 maps on LAN. Those are the best players in the world. They might be in a different order than you or I might have them, but those will be the best players in the world. Now go and look at the players who are active pros playing a lot of maps with the worst stats, and these will be the guys where if I asked you now to write down the worst players, you'd have a lot of those people on the list. Now that in that respect, stats can't lie in that particular respect. Like what kind of conspiracy would have to be going on for Freiburg to be playing really well and doing like -30s for event after event after event after event? I mean, if his team was winning, now I could maybe make some kind of a case for he's doing something there that's very difficult. He's not getting kills from it. But remember, they're losing and that's happening. So, I mean, I don't know what's defensible at that point in time when it's that science scenario.
Yeah, maybe. I definitely agree. I think he's the guy that needs to leave at this point. I think obviously he's perhaps a little bit edgy about that, like a little bit antsy about maybe moving on and not want, and leaving it all behind. Plus, will you ever get an opportunity to play with a player like Get Right, Forest again? Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't ever get that again in your career. And I know him and Forest are really tight and get along really, really well. So obviously that's an issue. But I think now's the time to gamble because I can identify what it's like to be piled on against. And it sucks having to criticize him time and time again. So if it is what he perceives it to be, and that he's doing his job in the team, but the team is setting him up to look bad, or the job that he's been told to do is setting him up to look bad, rather, then you need to perhaps think about that long term, because it's only going to harm your brand, harm your reputation, and harm your opportunities to get into other teams. Overall, do you feel this NIP lineup will stay together, I guess? I mean, it looks like, certainly based on what we saw at DreamHack Winter, that once again we're going to have the flip-flop, and maybe they're going to stay together.
I mean, that is certainly one of the rumors, that perhaps they just keep the whole team together. I think that's a mistake. I mean, that's just a scenario where it's like, listen, do it if you want to, but you're not going to have success. And if you don't have success, who can you blame at that point in time? You just kept the same team forever, no matter how many problems happened, no matter how many things went wrong, no matter how many people overtook you. If you then don't change something, I mean, I don't know what clemency you want at that point in time. You decided your own fate, so you're going to accept it. I don't have a problem with it, by the way. If Nip want to be an above average but never elite level team again, go have at it. If you want to make money and be friends, have a great time. But don't then come and tell me you're trying to be the best team in the world. That's where I get annoyed. And it's just a stupid point to make, because the best teams in the world make the tough decisions. Fnatic just kicked out a player from the best lineup of all time, took a gamble, and have now won another massive event. Yeah. And what's great is Fnatic is literally the org that is the model of everything Nip isn't. And that's why they've won 1 billion tournaments and Nip's won like 1 or 2 in the same span of time. Because Fnatic got Olofmeister, Fnatic got Dennis, Fnatic kicked out the right players at the right point in time. They made the hard choices to kick friends out. And as a result, they've reaped the rewards of being the most successful team of all time.
Rumors obviously circulating as well. A Brazilian website reported that they had sources that the Get Right to Cloud9 move was going to go ahead, that it was on. We also saw at the same time Cloud9 had added a 5th player to the roster, a grayed out photo and the name John Doe. I presume they're not adding a corpse. So they're obviously trying to hide the fact that somebody high profile
in some ways. It is Cloud9 after all.
So look, here's the thing. When I originally reported about this, or rather, I didn't report about it. I just talked about it. I never put anything in writing. What I can tell you is Cloud9 have expressed an interest in Get Right, I believe. I think obviously there's been some talking there behind the scenes, but I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know if it's a done deal by any stretch of the imagination, even at this point. And equally, I know players are certainly reluctant to be signing any contracts in any situation, no matter how lucrative or how exciting, before 2016, because we do not know the lay of the land in terms of leagues, broadcasting, prize money, sponsorships, etc., etc. It feels like everything's going to change come January 2016. So, with that in mind, I think maybe it's unlikely it's a done deal, but I definitely know they've certainly had a conversation.
I've got to say, Rich, if it turns out that Get Right joins Cloud9, Cloud9 as an organization have some morons in their ranks, because I assumed, could you give them credit, that they must be trolling by literally taking a photograph of Get Right, drawing an outline around it and making it a white inside, which if you saw, someone overlaid it and it's exactly his haircut from a specific picture. Now, this has happened in the past in esports, Rich, and every time it's happened in the past, it has been that player who's joined. So if they've done it as a jokey reference to that and to make a fake hype to build up to the eventual announcement, which everyone knows is coming, fine, great job. If it actually turns out that they really wanted to keep it secret and that they didn't know that, then I think there must be some level of mental deficiency going on in this org. Because here's an idea for you. Why not get a picture that's just a generic empty body head rather than one that has a specific outline of a guy's hair from a photo? Remember, it's not a portrait. It is a white space representing a body which doesn't yet exist. How hard is this concept to get through the heads of Americans in esports organizations?
Well, here's the thing as well, though. I get why you don't like the fake hype announcements bullshit anyway. You don't like all this fake build-up and announcements of announcements. Because you're like me, you've been in esports so fucking long. You know, we do get tired of the announcements of the announcements. Like, you know, and all the April Fools we have to put up with. Oh, no, our website's been hacked. Haha, just joking. It's been recoded.
I tell you what I get really sick of, Rich. It's the people. Here's the thing. If you're signing Get Right to Cloud9, do a campaign. Make some sort of advanced thing that builds into something and you drop hints and then eventually you have all this epic content, because that's a huge thing that should be celebrated. What I don't like is when a whole team goes, something really cool coming tomorrow, guys. Oh, God, see you at 10 p.m. tomorrow. Watch out, going to be something special. And then it's like, we are releasing our own mousepad. Fuck you. Fuck you, mate. That's like if you go on Reddit now, you'll see a clip on League of Legends, right? And it'll say insane outplay by Vayne. And then you click on it and it's a standard kill from Vayne. And you're like, okay, you won. You got me to click. But is that really the only benefit here? You've wasted my life on a fucking worth. I'd literally have mods removing those threads. Because how can threads stay upright? that are literally like false advertising, ridiculous exaggeration, yet they'll remove other threads for inaccuracy and stuff. That's the sort of thing where I don't get it, because here's the thing: if you do it once, you win. You tricked people. But if you keep tricking people, eventually you're an asshole. Like, I don't tease stuff like that. Go, oh God, insane article coming tomorrow. You won't even believe it. And then it's just like an 800-word column on like, oh, nuke's going to be added. Like, wouldn't people feel burned if I did that? Yeah. But the difference is when their beloved fan, their favorite player and org do that over and over, they're just like, oh, you got me last time. You said there was a toy under the bed. I bent over and you rammed it right up my ass. Is there another toy under there? Well, I'll just go ahead and trust that there's a toy there. Oh, he's got me again. Bloody get right. Just getting me up the ass all the time. He's the rascal him, isn't he? No, it's not funny. Kill yourself.
Oh my God! By the way, that reminds me, Duncan. There's something under my bed and I can't reach it.
Okay.
Can
I don't trust anyone, mate. Listen, I'll live without whatever that is. That's the metaphor.
Okay. Well, I hope that you're right, and it is like a fucking troll. Because I didn't realize the outline. I knew the outline looked a little bit like Get Right, but I didn't realize it was.
Someone actually overlaid the photo, and it's just him.
Wow. That's fucking unreal.
So there's a level to this that we better find out. They better know what they're doing here. If they don't, then I'm going to let them get a little toy that I've got under my bed. P.S. I don't even put a toy there. See?
It's good. It's good, mate. It's good. Right. Let's talk about TSM. Let's do it. So TSM looked great on day one. They 16-0 Liquid. They 16-13 Virtus.Pro on Mirage. Virtus.Pro have got that map well in the bag. Then against Luminosity, again, when you think they should be going to a final, in with a chance of winning the final, now that EnVyUs aren't in it, their nemesis has gone.
Yep.
This is TSM's time. So what happens? Turns out they can't seal the deal again. And I don't know what was going on, but Device, for the first time, Mr. Consistent, the player that we've talked about as being the world's best, I thought he was just missing at this event in, much the same way. Or rather in this series, in much the same way that, I don't know, he has had in the past. Like we know he used to go missing in semis, finals, quarterfinals, crunch games, and he hasn't done it for so long. I'm almost loath to bring it up, but he was really, really poor here, and from talking with the guys, they got a bit of a weird thing going on. Like, why the fuck are they banning Train when they're so good on Train? Why are they making series hard for themselves? What is going on within TSM?
I mean, first of all, in terms of Device, he was terrible in this series. This series was really bad. You have to remember, he was the guy in the Liquid game who was rocking. He was almost 30 frags in that game. In this series, he was so bad, it was worse than the old cases when he was in Dignitas and he used to choke. Because when he would choke on a map. Like he'd choke on the third map, or he'd choke on the second half of the third map. Like, yeah, the key point in the time, so you remember it. But otherwise, he'd be the reason they'd won a map earlier in the series and they got to a third map, So it wasn't even as bad in the past. This was an absolute abject failure, because you have to look at the way the series went. Mirage was actually Luminosity's pick, but TSM is a very good Mirage team. Okay, they won that. We saw they won it yesterday. That's great, and they were very dominant how they won it. Overpass was actually TSM's map pick. And this is where not picking Train fucked them. Because in this particular scenario, they were, I can't remember, maybe Luminosity banned Train, that kind of scenario. I'm not actually certain. But this is where Overpass is supposed to be TSM's map. But Luminosity actually won it, and by a big score. So already you could tell there was somewhat wrong. Now, admittedly, the Inferno game was very close, obviously, because it went to overtime. But I don't think I've ever seen a really big, close game like that, where the superstar player, the best player in the server, was the worst player in the server. Usually they might have an average game and you go, oh, if he'd have contributed a bit more. No, he was the worst player in the whole server, played incredibly scared, like didn't attempt to go for any of the shots he normally would. What's weird is normally he doesn't AWP when he gets worried. This time he was AWPing, but never going for any aggressive shots, and literally sometimes hiding and letting teammates die. It was so uncharacteristic. It was unbelievable.
It's really, really bizarre. I mean, you know, I know the players like to watch by the numbers. So what I will say to him is, like, not to worry. We've all had problems with choking. In terms of tactics, do you think there's something going on here? Because I think Carrigan isn't exerting his leadership, isn't exerting his force as much as an in-game leader should. He seems to be doing some sort of diplomatic approach, democratic approach to in-game leading. And I think this is making the vetoes a lot harder than they need to be.
Yeah, I think this is terrible. Like, the only team in which I think it's okay to have a democratic approach is if you explicitly know you don't have a really good in-game leader and it's a team that plays kind of like quite individualistically. Okay. So in that, like, for example, if EnVyUs, they told me that they had a democratic system, I'd be fine with that, because again, a lot of what's going to win you the game is how comfortable do your stars play. So if some of your stars, if 2-star players tell you, listen, I don't want to play train, actually, I'm not feeling good, that's fine. In TSM, you don't live and die just off your stars. You have an extremely regimented system as to who's going to do what, and then you win off your tactics. So to me, the in-game leader should be the one deciding the map, and then everyone else should be doing their part. They shouldn't be piping up like, I don't want to play Cobblestar, I don't want to play Trent, whatever the map is, because that's going to throw off the plan of the in-game leader. How's he supposed to formulate what you're going to do on this map? How's he supposed to know what you're going to do in this situation? I think that's a terrible place to be. And also, I just want to say, actually, one last topic on the device thing.
Yeah.
I don't know where this myth comes from that I'm like Device's biggest fan and never criticize Device.
You used to wreck him worse than anyone else.
What's funny is every time he fails now, I still contact him and say, like, what the fuck are you doing? You were terrible in that game. Like, that's totally unacceptable. Because here's the thing. He was so good. That's why the disparity is so huge. Fans are just some of the stupidest people in the world, Richard. What they'll really do is they'll go, let's say there was a footballer in the Premiership, right? And he scored 2 goals in every game for 9 straight games. And then you said, this guy's the best striker in the Premiership. And then in the 10th game, he not only didn't score, but like really badly missed all his chances. Imagine a fan came to you and said, haha, idiot, you said that guy was a good player. Look, he had a bad game. You would literally look at the guy like, mate, seriously, like, what do we need to get you? Like a counselor? Like, is there something wrong with your diet? Is there so much mercury in your diet? Like, at this point in time, has something happened emotionally? Like, was your dad's name Device? And like, you know, he did something to you when you were a child and it's putting some triggers there. Like, something's going wrong and it has nothing to do with Device and how he's playing, mate. So if you've got some problems, guess what? When I said Device was the best player in the world, secret for you guys, don't tell anyone. He was the best player in the world at the time. do you know why he's not the best player in the world now? You ready? He's not playing like the best player in the world anymore. It's a dynamic state. They don't stay like that status. It's not, in that case, why isn't Get Right the best player in the world? I said he was the best player in the world 2 years ago.
Come on, Duncan. You're a fanboy. We all know it.
Exactly. I am, mate.
We all know it, mate.
That's why I keep banging those final results out, you know.
Yeah.
75% for anyone. 75% accuracy rate over 30 events or something. So, Dick, stats and maths. In fact, Isaac Newton could have come on here right now, write a book none of you could understand, explain why you should suck my dick, and I'm right. That's how deep I've gone.
What would it be? What would it be called? What would that book be called?
Principia Thorinica Skrill Magnicus.
Pretty good, not bad.
Make the photos. It wasn't bad because I came up with it on fly.
Yeah, that's actually pretty impressive. Well done. If anyone not getting that joke, I recommend you use Google. Like so many of the other reference games that we play that may or may not be on point.
I mean, that one can't really be on point, can it?
No, I think it's good. I like that we're going way back now. We are going way back.
I mean,
now.
Literally, like, what's that, like 17th century reference point game on point? Like,
why not, mate?
Why not?
So yeah, TSM, can they fix this? And with all the things that are going on behind the scenes, we know there's a chance that they might not even be with TSM next year. I think we can safely deduce they've had talks with Optic. I think that's not even a secret at this point. So, I mean, again, are they distracted?
The difference is, when I look at the NIP team and the issues they're going through, I know that when they were the best team in the world, they had some issues. They had some players who had some serious physical conditions that they were battling through, and they were still a fantastic team for the reasons they used to be, and they still won. Those are veteran players, some of them like Forrest, Get Right, etc. Some of the best players of all time, certain players with incredible mental fortitude. Those teams, I don't buy as much that you're getting influenced by stuff. TSM basically were always the most fragile team in the entire fucking game for the level of skill they had in their lineup. They had all those issues. When they got into TSM, they were starting to pick it up a little bit. Even then, they would have tournaments where they would come in last place. Remember, they finished last place at ESL, ESCA Pro League, despite the fact they were winning events on either side of it. So they're obviously a team that are easy to knock off. And like I say, you add in what we already have heard, that they're having like scenarios where they're banning one of their best maps, where they're allowing opponents to pick the weakest map, where they're playing on maps that they're strong on and their star players going missing. There's clearly a lot of issues going on. Now, the obvious fix would be, yes, let's fix the org aspect, because that's the one thing that you can do without changing any players. But I mean, as it goes forwards right now, I get that. I don't have any reason to be hopeful right now for TSM. Like what I've seen at the moment, they play fantastically. They can also bomb completely. It's happening in a couple of events now. So I don't see why that's going to change overnight. I don't see what's gone wrong that they would like. Put it this way, they don't know what's going wrong. When I've talked to them, they haven't identified anything that tells me that they're on the track to hunting down whatever's plaguing them at the moment. So I would suspect it's going to happen for a few more months. Now that can fix itself if, for example, Device just fixes his shit. If he starts getting it together individually, he can carry some games, get some through close games. Maybe they start working train back in, they win it a few times, they get confidence. Okay, that could all fix itself. But at the moment, when you look at Fnatic, when you look at VP, these teams at the moment aren't having any of those issues. So I'd have to say that those teams should be able to beat TSM in these big tournaments.
Okay. We are sort of going around the houses here, but obviously there's more teams to talk about, and then we'll get into the big talk about Luminosity right at the end. I think it's worth focusing on our fallen American comrades of Team Liquid, also 16-0'd on day one by TSM. They had a fairly comfortable 2-0 series win over Legacy, and then of course they got fairly comprehensively beaten by Virtus.Pro, 66 and 16-8. Now we've been kind of talking about Team Liquid a bit and trying to get an idea of where they are. Obviously, the 16-0 against TSM was hugely embarrassing, especially as, lest we forget, we were billing this one as one of the games of the day, real upset potential, who knows what's going to happen, and it just wasn't even a contest. It was super embarrassing. So what's your take on the temperature of Team Liquid right now?
That was literally the most embarrassing 16-0 I've ever seen, because it was one of their best maps, Overpass. It was also a map where they started CT side, and it's a CT-sided map. So add that all together. Here's the thing. If TSM had won the whole event, okay, maybe you can just say TSM's too godlike right now. We saw TSM get wrecked by Luminosity on a map. So on the same map, in fact. So, I mean, that's really terrible to me. That kind of does set you back a bit, considering all the strides they'd supposedly making over the last few months. Then you look at the VP series, and this was just embarrassing. Yeah, they just got bodied in this series. Like, they were just getting absolutely wrecked by everyone on VP. And it doesn't help that the map pool means that Liquid's idea of a good map draw against VP is to get Overpass and Mirage. I mean, just go ahead and sign the death warrant at that point in time. I don't know how you want to win that series at that point in time. Like, it's going to be very hard for you. So I think Liquid has some serious issues still. I have to say, to be fair, they did play TSM. They did play VP. These are two of the top 4 teams in the entire world. This isn't the same as if they'd lost to like a 7th best team. These are teams they shouldn't be beating, but they should definitely be making it a lot closer.
And look, here's the thing that I don't get, right? And this is just tangential, but there was a player, and obviously we'll talk about this towards the end of the show. There's a player called Pimp, right? Yep. He's pretty good.
Certainly.
Definitely good enough to play in NA. I think, and be a star player out there. Now, he was doing the rounds. He was a free agent. And I think he'd said he would happily join an NA team and move to NA, provided it wasn't like a Winter Fox or whatever.
Yep.
It wasn't some fucking unstructured disaster.
Let's be real right now, Rich. If CLG, Cloud9, or Team Liquid offered Pimp a contract, he would take it tomorrow and he would go and live in NA and be playing for their teams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyone who's a fan of any of those teams and looks at any of them and goes, oh, maybe they need a player, maybe they could prove one. Then I doubt whoever they get will be, unless they get right in the Cloud9, they won't get a player that's better than Pimp was this summer.
No way, no way. And what I was thinking was, you know, he must have. Team Liquid must have been aware of this. There must have been a conversation, like something must have happened there. And why did I've got nothing against Fugly, but it's clear to me he's the dead weight in this team at this time.
I mean, Adren's pretty bad, but we all know he's like
but yeah, he can't go anywhere.
Record to remove him. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Obviously, that you can't do that. You can't remove Adren. So I don't know. I mean, what is so cast in stone about this particular lineup that you wouldn't want to make a clear improvement to it?
Like, let's be real. First and foremost, Team Liquid is the organization in the history of esports that is most averse to making changes and removing people who are underperforming. I'm talking the history of esports. Like, go back to StarCraft 2 in 2010, and they have players who are just bombs, who are wrecking it in last place, and these guys won't be removed from the team. Doesn't matter how many. They allowed certain StarCraft 2 players to go to 30 tournaments and finish like 24th place. This really happened. They wasted funds on that when better players were available. So they've shown as an org that they have a trajectory where they won't remove people. Now, I'll give credit on the League of Legends side of things, which as far as I know is run differently because that's run by Steve Arneset, Liquid 112, who was cursed previously before he got bought by Liquid. Now, in League of Legends, they're pretty good at this. They're the opposite. They'll chop and change when they need players to. When a star player becomes available, they'll bring him in, try and make it work. I like the way they do it there. In CSGO, it seems at least as if Niall Skull's more on that side of things, in charge of that. So he's the guy from the StarCraft 2 era who doesn't make the changes. Then remember, this is a team that supposedly has a coach. So the coach should be having a big say in the roster, right? Well, their coach was the one, while their team was getting fucking bodied in this tournament, making snarky tweets on Twitter about how analysts have said things. You might recognize this, about how if a team's played 5 LANs, they've probably hit 80% of their potential, and you know what type of team they are. And that's a ridiculous statement. You know, it's not true at all. And that instead you need to work with, I think he did some thing that sounded like something out of a fucking chick flick for finding spirituality. Like you gotta pray, believe, and work together and have brothership and bonding together. Like it was like some eat, pray, love faggotry. Like I don't know what this kid thought he was doing. Like he just didn't make any sense whatsoever. And so basically his real premise for this team is it doesn't matter that they've played 6 LANs with this lineup. Doesn't matter that they've never won a LAN and they've never had a big international performance. He's okay with them playing 6 straight LANs, never having a chance to win the tournament. To him, they haven't even scratched the potential yet. Well, here's the thing, mate. If they haven't scratched the potential, you're probably a fucking dog shit coach, aren't you? Fnatic made a roster move, won the tournament. Luminosity made a roster move, made the final of the tournament. EnVyUs made a roster move, won loads of tournaments. You're fucking garbage. So first and foremost, cut players that aren't good enough, get a fucking coach who isn't an empty chair with an empty bag of Doritos on it, and then let's start working with get some good players in the lineup. That'd be the 3 ways I'd fix the team.
I mean, look, I got to say as well, and obviously people will think this is personal, but just the idea of, you're watching, you're not at the event, you're watching your team underperform.
No, not underperform. Literally get bent over, someone spread their arsehole and go, I'm going to be right up there in a minute. And then they're just going, help us, coach. And then you're going, pray, stay together, battle through it mentally, and it'll all be over soon. Great.
I mean, but here's the thing. Or every point he was making on Twitter was
every metaphor is literally homosexual rape.
Yeah, I gotta say, Doug, and I think
I have got some I have got something going on there. I'll have to figure that myself.
We honestly need to get you some fucking therapy, mate. It's been out of control, this show. Every time we've discussed about someone losing a game, it's been, so there you are, you get your arsehole spread. Are they signing Get Right? Yeah, Get Right. What's this toy under the bed? What's happened? What happened to you, mate? We need to have a fucking talk, brother.
I have gone down a dark path there. Speaking of going down a dark passage, Team Liquid get back to you.
Exactly. There we go. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I've gone down a dark passage. And they spat on it. And look, just relax, man. Not everything's about anal sex. I know that might come as a surprise to you.
Yeah, we've all got our fetishes, Rich. Obviously, asphyxiation in your case. Anal with me.
Yeah, I know.
I'm working through some shit.
And I'm increasingly told it's not professional to indulge them. So anyway, let's get back to what I was going to say. The point I was going to make. is that I don't understand why you're watching your team sort of get wrecked to that degree. And like you said, there's 16 zeros where it's just, I mean, every 16-0 is embarrassing. But that, like you said, that's probably the most embarrassing 16-0. There's no reason for it to be a 16-0. There's no excuse for it to be a 16-0. Everything is stacked in your favor. So for him to be sat there going, well, you know, we just need to get to this level and people need to not have knee-jerk reactions and not want to change teams. And it's like you can't compare all of that little league coaching bullshit, right? Like to fucking esports. Some lessons will carry over, sure. Some lessons will. But when it comes to fucking esports, a year is a ridiculously long time for a lineup.
Yep.
Ridiculously long. It'd be unprecedented to go an entire, to go, say, 2 years and not make a lineup change. That's why when we talk about teams like NIP, they're the anomaly. They're the outlier. Everyone else is chopping and changing. And sometimes you have drastic improvements. I'd probably say more often than not. And other times you don't. And then you take another throw of the dice. And he's preaching all of this. Let's all stay together, man. Well, it didn't work. Like you said, the team that won the tournament made a change. Made a really surprising change. Took out an in-game leader. Gave the in-game leader duty to someone who's never really been an in-game leader for a prolonged period of time. Doesn't even have the personality, in my opinion, to be a in-game leader in the classical sense of how we think about it, and brought in Dennis, so ridiculous. And Luminosity brought in 2 unproven players at international level in CSGO, of course. So ridiculous assertions. And I honestly think he's doing it because he needs to justify his employment at this stage. Because I think when Team Liquid are playing well, I think it's usually down to Adren's tactics. I don't think it's got anything to do with him sat behind him saying, come on, man, let's talk through our problems. I don't think that's a level of fucking insight that's really going to help you win a series. So, yeah, maybe Team Liquid might want to look at coaches, and he might want to look at his fucking team instead of looking over at the analysis desk. Although, if he wants a job at DreamHack, I hear there's some vacancies. So, long story short, Team Liquid, are they plateauing? Are they on the downward slope? Do they need to make a change? Do they need to carry on? Is it peace and love, like GB James says?
It's been too many events, mate. Like early on, they teased us with some potential, but that's all it ever is. It's just a tease. It never goes beyond that. They just never look like they're going to win big series over these top teams. So at the moment, I mean, I don't know what's going to change in the next event for them. I can't see what it's going to be. I think the same problem, the same strengths they have show all the time. The same weaknesses they have show all the time. The same players underperform in big games. Same players do very well in big games. Nitro still does very well in tournaments where he's losing and coming in like last place or whatever it is. So to me, yeah, they're in big trouble right now. For me, they're just stuck in the mud. Now, for NA, that might be fine. They can probably be the second best team in NA. They can maybe win a LAN. Who knows? If they have a miracle performance, they could win a LAN over Cloud9, especially with Cloud9 changing players. Who knows? Maybe now they get to be NA number ones for free just because Cloud9's altering in-game leader. But it won't count for anything internationally. So until they do something, I mean, you got to put up and shut up eventually. Like, they haven't had any good results. Cloud9 at least made all those finals. What the fuck has Team Liquid done? Won 1 map off Fnatic. And at that point, Fnatic were like, Jesus, we've really gotten far. Can we just change something if we're losing to Team Liquid?
Yeah. Virtus.Pro, in with a chance of winning this tournament. They came in. They had a bit of a slow start. Weren't great against Legacy. Lost to TSM. Obviously beat Liquid 2-0, then lost to Fnatic in a 2-1 series. Did take a map off the eventual tournament winners. I thought Pasha was looking pretty sharp and good this tournament. Bialy, his usual up and down self. But the one thing that really stood out for me was just that they came into this and the coach Cuban was talking about how they were trying to play a new style. We talked about this during the broadcast that we couldn't really discern exactly what it was, but it did seem to be slightly slower, a bit more deliberate with some of their executes, for example. But for the most part, it was the Virtus.Pro that we knew. But they seem to be really tired. They hadn't practiced, like the tournaments have been the practice. Would you think at this stage, Virtus.Pro, they're always there, they're always coming close. Would they benefit from a break, maybe?
I do think they attend too many tournaments. The problem is, I mean, I think part of it's ingrained in their minds as a team is that because they went through so many lean years where they didn't make as much salary as other people, and obviously prize money is worth a lot of money to these guys where they're from. I can understand why they have the logic of, listen, we'll attend loads of tournaments. We're not going to win them all, but we're going to make top fours. We're going to make the final, and we are going to win some. So, I mean, even top four prize money nowadays is good money. It's a few thousand each. So I can see why they can't turn down the money. I mean, we've been in this position, Rich, where you take events to do for work analysis where you probably shouldn't. You probably need a break, but you think, oh, how can I turn down that much money? So I think that would definitely help them. I'd rather they just like got things together at home and practice, then went to events when they were strong. And I think they'd have a much better showing in general. They're still a fantastic team, though. I mean, as much as this will rage people out who are watching now, I don't think it's clear cut that Luminosity was the second best team in this tournament. I mean, you have to realize Virtus.Pro played a pretty good game against TSM on Mirage. That was a good game. And then had to play Fnatic in the semifinals and won a map pretty well off Fnatic. So
yeah,
I have to look at that and say VP's unlucky to have to play Fnatic in the semifinals. Who knows what happens if they play a Luminosity or something. I'd love to see that match, actually. I think it'll be an incredible match when you think of the map pools the two teams have. So that would be very fun to see. I thought VP was good. Here's the sad thing. This was the one tournament where almost everyone else from VP turned up. Neo's winning all these clutches. Bialy's having big games. The one time Snacks didn't turn up with a really consistent performance. He had like one or two maps he was good. He had the entire Fnatic series. He was just okay, if not underwhelming at times. So if he'd have come anywhere close to what he's normally at, because he's usually incredibly consistent, I think they would have had a shot at beating Fnatic. I don't think they would have. Fnatic looked a little bit better, but it would have been a much closer affair. So I don't think VP's in trouble. I think they're one of the lineups where there's nothing to worry about here. Just go home, attend more events. If you play 5 events, you're going to win 1 or 2 of them. You're going to make some finals in them. You're going to make top 4s. You're a fantastic team. The good thing for VP is it's the same news as it always has been, Rich. They're never going to be the best team in the world, but it doesn't matter because they can win the biggest tournaments in the world and they can take top 4 at all the tournaments in the world. So for me, that's a great place to be in.
Right, we'll pick up the pace. We've got the finalists to talk about. Luminosity, I think we'll do. Again, just to underline how much of a ridiculous story this is, they come into the tournament day 1. They get 16-0'd by Fnatic on Dust 2. Then from that point onwards, they get a series win over EnVyUs, a series win over NIP, a series win over TSM, and then they take a map off Fnatic in the final in what would have been one of the most ridiculous stories in any version of Counterstrike had they managed to win the tournament overall. Now, I find this interesting, despite the fact that I thought we were full of praise for Luminosity throughout the broadcast. I know I was. I'm pretty sure you were too. You seem to have triggered a lot of Brazilian fans. Now, if you can explain to me how you managed to do this without using an anal sex reference, I'd be very intrigued to know how you did it.
I mean, right off the bat, by predicting they wouldn't win matches, that's the end. That's the end right there, by the way. Because remember, to fans, they don't say, right, well, I analyzed the game and I thought they'd win in this way, or I thought that this would happen. What they say is, I knew they would win. Like, you're an idiot if you didn't think they would win, and I believed they would win. These are all totally irrelevant things to say to someone. If someone says that to me, I go, great, well, this guy believes he's Napoleon. I'm not going to join him in trying to conquer Russia, though. He can go and do that shot on his own, you know. So essentially, just being massive fans is the problem here. I said fans there, guys, but also the other meaning. So, that's the biggest problem there, because like I said, I mean, I've given plenty of praise to Luminosity appropriately.
Yeah.
Well, I think even without beating Fnatic, it was the best underdog tournament run I think I've probably ever seen in CSGO. Because, obviously beating Fnatic would have been like the icing on the cake, but that's like a bridge too far, isn't it? You just beat NIP, EnVyUs, TSM. That's ridiculous. These are all best of 3 series as well, remember? They're not just best of 1s.
Yeah, and that was the one problem they had coming into this. It was like, Luminosity can't win best of 3s. And when you saw that 16-0 on day 1, we're like, well, now they can't fucking win best of 1s either. Brilliant. Way to regress. And look, let's be real here. You know, up until the final, Taco didn't look particularly, competent. He looked like a player. He was on the server. He was doing something. But in terms of what you'd seen before, I thought, Bolts, for example, he looked a much more competent player than Taco did. That said, in the final against Fnatic, I thought Taco kind of came into his own, had some good maps, had some good moments, had some nice clutches. Now, FNX, he looked fucking great. Like, I mean, not in terms of overall statistics, but just his clutch play was really, really good. Like, he outbrained Get Right in the NIP series, which that takes some doing. And obviously, let's be real. He's had a, he's a legendary 1.6 guy in Brazil, and he's kind of, trying to get back to this level. Had a bit of time out, and I think what a pickup he's been. And I think the big take home for Luminosity was, yeah, coldzera still absolutely sick. One of the MVPs at this tournament as well. Fur still absolutely sick. But it was Fallen who had such a disappointing major that not only stepped it up in terms of his AWPing, all-round fragging, his in-game leading was superb. His tactics were superb. He was innovating strats on Cobblestone, which looks to be a map that Luminosity are increasingly getting better on. So overall, I was really, really impressed with him. The question is this one tournament anomaly? Are they going to be like another Cloud9? You're an unknown quantity. Maybe you make it to a few finals, but then you drop off and you never achieve that again. I think that's what the heartbreak about this is. This actually was a chance they could have won a tournament. And I don't know if they'll get another one soon.
Yeah, that's the big issue. I don't know that they'll be in finals competing for tournaments. This looks like a team where when everything goes right like this, they could make a semi-final of a big tournament. More likely, they're probably going to be the round of 8 team, but the difference is before they wouldn't have a chance to win the round of 8 match. Now they'll have a chance. It's just that if they're against the VP or someone, it's still going to be hard. They're going to be the underdog. The main problem I have here is it was great. Like, Fallen's performance was fantastic. Even though coldzera was fragging out of his mind, if they'd won this tournament, you could have made a case Fallen was the MVP just in terms of what his impact as a fragger absolutely. And in-game leader was. He was coming up with shot on the fly on maps they hadn't even played. That's absolutely insane. So, yeah, very impressive stuff there. But then you look at it and you have to say, there's almost no way everyone is going to turn up in this form again. I mean, Fallen, how many initial AWP shots did he hit? coldzera can do that every time. Fur can do around that level every time. Those two I'm fine with. Fallen's very unlikely to go this crazy. And then FNX, I can believe he can be a clutch player. He can have his role, etc. But I think he actually overperformed a bit in this tournament. So when you have 4 players who are all almost maxed out in terms of what they could do in a game, you're going to have a very good chance to go far. Then you add in the tactics, and you can see now in hindsight why they were so dangerous, but we couldn't have known at the time. I mean, remember, as each series passed, we were learning that they could play new maps or that they could even beat elite level teams on maps that were some of the best for those teams. So it really was like a learning process. The problem is every other team that's watched this tournament and played them is also learning from that. They're going to figure out, right, these are the maps we just ban out right now, or we play this one against them as a questionable map, or here's a map where it was strong for us before, but if we play them, here's the tactic that works for them. So unfortunately, I think they're going to have an accelerated version of what happened to Cloud9 in the summer, where they get figured out faster. Because you have to realize part of the reason Cloud9 got the edge for so long is because those 3 tournaments were all in a row. So there's no time for people to go home and scan all the demos and figure everything out. So unfortunately for Luminosity, I think they'll get figured out a bit. But I am excited by the prospect that, hey, if things go well, maybe they can be like the 6th or 7th best team in the world. That's pretty cool. If we could have another team that could win big series and at least every now and then win like a series off a VP or an NIP type team, that would be pretty cool to have another top squad.
I just love it because they're a persistent counter argument to anything the NA scene say about
it's great,
the problem. Yeah, it is just amazing that you've got, right, okay, let me tell you about fucking Fallen, by the way. I know you know this. This is more for the benefit of the people at home. Like, in the Brazilian scene, this is what you had, right? You had maybe one legitimate organization at any given time that sucked up any sponsorship that went into that region, which was super limited, because despite all of the untapped potential of South America, the only people that have really explored kind of putting on international events in that region are ESL, with this, I think it was the Sao Paulo events. Now, there's always been one, whether it was MIBR or whatever, there's always been one team that actually gets sponsorship deals, gets the international sponsorship deals, manages to get all the best players to congregate. Everyone else is just getting fucking wrecked. Every other organization is a scammer. It's unbelievable how how these players have to like tiptoe through this super murky scene just to get a sponsorship, just to get somebody that can get them to an event. And more often than not, it's not even about legitimate sponsorships. It's very often private investment, businesses, ridiculous. Anyway, Fallen was the guy he's the guy that goes out and makes this happen. He's the guy who sits down and talks to people. He's the guy who talks to like fucking sponsors, investors. He's the guy that keeps orgs together. And like, obviously, he's a fucking great in-game leader in the sense that he's a guy you want to play for because he backs you. I mean, how many events did this lineup go to, even though you could see Steel was maybe a weak link in the chain, even though you could see they were always going to fall down in best of threes, and very often in heartbreaking ways, 16-13, 16-14s, and there was never a knee-jerk change. Never. He always said the same thing. We're going to stay together, we're going to work, we're going to improve. And I talked to him on the first day of the tournament. We traveled to the tournament together in the shuttle provided by DreamHack. And he said, like, I was really gutted and reluctant to do this, but something had to give because we kept losing those games in the same way. And it wasn't once or twice, it was 10 or 12 times. And he just said we everything we tried wasn't fixing the problem. So I tried this as a last resort. Anyway, so this guy has basically been the fucking linchpin. He created an entire scene, basically. He created pretty much every team that's actually had any success coming out of Brazil, right? And got the money and got them there and been the captain and took on all that extra responsibility. And then you have NA guys who are like, I don't know, man, it's tough here. It's a bit tough. We don't really have the support or the infrastructure. We just need to stay together, work things out.
Rich, this might spend a year. Because after the major, where we referenced the same thing when Luminosity made the round of 8, that teams from NA complain all the time. There was a lot of people who said, well, I haven't seen anyone complaining. Where did they complain? Show me the tweets. What they don't realize, Rich, is, first of all, they all say it more subtly in interviews. They'll say stuff like, well, the practice situation isn't so good for us. Now, when we say they're complaining, we have to listen to these cunts in real life. They never shut the fuck up with the excuses. They're like this James guy. They're totally deluded as to what the real problems are. It's everyone else's fault that they're doing badly in life. Now, these Brazilian guys, aside from when they had that drama with Team Liquid over the restart of that round at the RGN LAN, I've never heard them complain about shit. I've never heard them ever complain about like, oh, practice situation. Or they just get their nose to the grindstone and they go to work. And you know what? Here's one thing I've got to give Fallen massive props for. How ballsy this roster move was. Because I would have even said, okay, do the roster move for the next tournament, mate. For this one, play it out with your last lineup. If they'd have done that, they would have never made even the semifinals at this tournament. It would have not have happened for them. So obviously he couldn't have known that it would work. But the key thing that he understood was there was a problem in the last lineup. We weren't winning these best of threes. Our best scenario was to win the one map, and then we wouldn't go further. It's capped out. So you know what? Fuck it. Let's just get started on the next edition of this team, which is to have these new players and start building it on. We'll even sacrifice this event. Remember, they could have just got rocked at this event, but it would have been for a cause to get better in the future and to get these guys bedded in. And the key thing is, when you contrast that against Team Liquid, we were talking about before, who can play 5 LANs with the same lineup, 6 LANs or whatever, and don't give a fuck that they're getting rocked out in last place. Now you can see the difference between the scenes and why this Brazilian team has gone from nobodies to one-map upsets to taking an NA org from an NA team, and now is actually coming to the final of a big international tournament, which only one NA team has done this year. So I think it's mega impressive stuff. And yeah, you got to give a lot of the credit to Fallen because he's the guy with the vision. He's the guy who saw a way. Now, he didn't necessarily know the way, but he saw that there was a way to go, and he kept doing whatever he needed to until he got to that point in time. And that even included taking on a role himself that he wasn't doing before as the AWPer. Then it included trying to be aggressive as well. Like it's almost like you can think of nothing that he hasn't thought about. Like, oh, is there anything else I could do that get us to the next level? He's done it all. So, I mean, he's got to be one of the best in-game leaders of the year when you look at where his team came from and where they are now. Yeah,
and you know, rightly starting to get some plaudits and clearly has a level of tactical awareness. Like I say, you know, the strats Luminosity were running were innovative. They were doing things in Cobblestone that we hadn't really seen from top-tier teams before. So I'm really excited at the prospect of this team. It's just that I don't think it's going to be the fairy story we'd all hoped for. This was, for me, the tournament that if they won it, brilliant. You know, then they've got something. It's a crazy story. You remember it for all time. Unfortunately, even though it was still a massive achievement, they only made it to the final. And I don't know if we'll see them in a final again. I'd love to be proven wrong. But the one thing I will say is they're going to be up there. This is a lineup that's really got potential, like you say, to be a top 6, top 5 team. So let's watch their progress with interest. And I hope everybody kind of supports them and champions that boldness, especially coming out of a region that's, you know, known for recycling talent and peddling excuses. And by region, obviously, I mean they play in NA when it comes to the domestic league. So finally, new look Fnatic comes in. Pronax out, of course. Flusher, the in-game leader. Dennis in. And they go and win the whole tournament where not many people, even on day one, even after 16-0ing Luminosity, not many people thought they would go on and win it. We were looking at EnVyUs. We were looking at TSM maybe. Virtus.Pro on the outside because Snacks was back, but certainly still a very good shout. Fnatic, new lineup. You feel it's an event, too soon. But they go ahead and win it, and they win it pretty convincingly. Now, my question to you isn't to break down the minutiae of who played well or anything like that. It's, could we be witnessing, given everything else that's going on, TSM maybe moving orgs, EnVyUs obviously having problems. I mean, they're getting, at the moment, they were losing to Vexed as we were doing this broadcast. Obviously, something not well. But could Fnatic change Pronax up and start another era again?
It's hard to do eras, man, because like I always describe about the past eras I talked about, you tend to have to constantly be battling someone who's coming up. Someone else starts to get good. You got to figure out how to play against them. They beat you once. You got to figure out how do I come back and revenge them, you know. It's really hard to do like a full-on era and have like 6 months where you're the best and you win like 70% of the tournaments and you make 80% of the finals and you make 99% of the top fours. That's super hard. That's the reason why there are very few teams in history have done it. So as of right now, I would probably say that's a bit generous to say that Fnatic's going to do it. Now, they did look very good at this tournament. But again, it's their first tournament. Like, I actually don't think that every tournament is going to go as well as this did for Fnatic. I think it's a bit, just like when EnVyUs came out the gate and rocked everyone at that Gamescom, I think it's a bit unrealistic to think they're just going to wreck everyone completely. Now, they had some big positives going for them. Olofmeister looked entirely revitalized. Crims was winning mad amount of clutch rounds. All looked really good. Dennis didn't really have to do that much because they were so good as a team. I want to see them when they hit the rough waters. Like, for example, I want to see them play EnVyUs in a best of 3. And I want to see if a map like Cash is going to be the third map, something like that. Then what happens when they play a team like EnVyUs on that? They can certainly lose to some of these teams. VP could beat them. EnVyUs could beat them. I don't know about TSM because TSM seems to be going to shit against the top teams. But I think in series, these teams are definitely going to be competing against each other. Also, would great to see the new Na'Vi, the old Na'Vi lineup rather, play against this new Fnatic team. So I don't think they're going to be like the dominant team. I'd have to see a few more events where, at very least, they show like a consistency where they're very good.
For me, I thought they looked great, but you could still see that they could be got to. The problem is the people with the tools all were just locked into their own sort of personal hell at this tournament. You know, EnVyUs, Virtus.Pro, and obviously as well TSM. Those were the matchups I wanted to see. I mean, I certainly expected, no disrespect to Luminosity, after they've already beat EnVyUs and NIP, you're like, pretty good run, Luminosity, well done. Now you're playing TSM. It's big boy time. It looked to be destined to be a Fnatic TSM final, and I would have given the final to TSM had that come up, but it didn't. And I don't know if avoiding some of the big boys has kind of maybe helped Fnatic to a win here. Plus the fact that, as Olofmeister himself said, they always feel more settled when they're playing on Swedish soil. So obviously, I'm not going to start ringing the bells, but they played a damn sight better than I thought they would. Like, really convincingly.
The key conclusion to me was, from watching this, they could be the #1 team in the world. That could happen for them. Obviously, they'd need to have a lot of really good performances in this vein. So it's not like they're just going to earn it overnight, especially because right now, it'll still probably take an event or two before EnVyUs would drop off when you consider all the chopping and changing of Fnatic and other teams. But at least it's not as obvious. Like, here's the problem. Before, to me, the only person I thought would really challenge TSM for the number one spot was EnVyUs was TSM. Because even though they had the bad matchup, I thought they had everything else to be number one. So when TSM goes to shit, you think, right, well, it's pretty much open for EnVyUs at this point. Not so fast. Now the Fnatic team really adds something interesting to the equation where they can battle EnVyUs for the number one spot. That's why the main storyline for me now is I want to see those two teams meet. That's the next collision I want to see.
Now, we'll wrap up DreamHack Winter there. Congratulations to Fnatic. We'll do a quick news grabs. Obviously, I don't want to drag the show out a lot longer. Duncan's got content to create in that library in Inferno. Which, by the way, have you talked to the guy who made that video?
No, don't know. I'm just a fan, I guess, Rich.
Yeah, that's I used to have those. What a fucking sick video that was, though.
It's wicked, isn't it?
Yeah. Just the idea of you just being cooped up permanently in a room surrounded by...
there was even a little... There was even a little sort of like Easter egg that some people didn't notice, which I didn't see it the first time. On the desk, he'd actually put a little baguette next to the keyboard.
Yeah, and the coat was a nice touch.
That was a nice touch, right? I can't believe you can actually model a coat like that inside CS.
Yeah, so really great video out there. It's called Tribute to Thorin's Thoughts. If you haven't seen it, you can find it on YouTube. Great work there. I'm not... Please don't make any videos. I've had enough of the Homer Simpson images for the last 4 days. I was going to talk about the whole UX gaming scandal, but we were kind of... I know you didn't really follow this.
No.
So we won't do it. I think we should save it because I was going to write something up about it. I was digging into it. I'm still kind of looking at it, but obviously with everything else that's been going on, been a little bit distracted. So I don't think we'll get into that. Sunde coming back to MTW. I think this is noteworthy news. You did a video about Sunde. Obviously, it was at the height of all of the nonsense that was going on. So, yeah, I don't know how it did in terms of votes on Reddit. But obviously, this guy is a legend. In 1.6 was part of that MTW team that played some incredible games and won some amazing tournaments between 2009 2011. And it looks like they might be reassembling certainly at least the core of that old lineup. They've got Minute back, they've got Sunde back, Zonic is one, right?
Yeah, he was one in that team as well.
I'm trying to think because Carrigan was in there.
No, Carrigan was like
Carrigan,
sorry. It was Trace.
Yeah, Trace, that was it. And
then in the last lineup, it was Arcadian, but in some of the ones they had before that, they had like, let me think who else. Ave,
of course. How the fuck can I forget? So, yeah, so there you go. Sorry, yeah, Carrigan was in that other one. What was it? That I think I had an X.
He was in Full Gaming or something like that.
Yeah. So, obviously, MTW, they could reassemble this old lineup with those guys in. There's a lot of talk about Zonic coming back and being part of the lineup. What's interesting is there was talk as well that Nico was going to be part of this lineup.
I mean, you could understand why, in as much as nearly all those players haven't played competitive CSGO, or if they have, in the case of Trace, not for very long and it didn't go that well. So even though to me and you, Nico, it's like, well, he hasn't played well in a long time and he's not relevant right now. Just for having someone who at least does some, like he's a lot more relevant than those guys are, put it that way. I mean, the fact that you have to go back like 3 or 4 years to get to a point where these were great players shows that like this is really, to me at the moment, this is like a PR move. Like they're coming back to get some sick money. Maybe they're really determined to make it, but early on, they're only going to be riding off their old glory. So yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of getting the Nico move in there, but then again, how can I say that about Nico when some of these players might be absolutely terrible for all I know, might just come for a paycheck?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've seen some of these players, be used as stand-ins and stuff. Some of the people, I think the jury's still out on some of them. But look, it's like everything. When Gobby came, back and sort of took over Mouse Sports, everyone was super excited to see what he'd do. We're like, hey, it's one of the greatest in-game leaders in 1.6 history, and this guy didn't even know how to use a fucking Molotov. Never seen one before. Can you imagine? He'd never seen fire before, Duncan. It was blowing his mind. He's burning himself at the fucking Acer Predator. The Ace Predator Masters, I think it was, where he made a debut, the first one at the Take TV house. And he was really, really poor. And since then, he's improved. He added a surprising level of sort of clutching ability. He's getting better all the time. He's never going to be a sick fragger. He's never going to be that kind of in-game leader, but he's a useful player. He makes a contribution. And I think if you give these guys time, you know, they know what it takes. They play at a level. If they're patient with the game and patient with each other, who knows? You know, there's definitely room for another kind of top 10 contender to sneak in there. The bottom of the top 10 isn't cemented by any stretch of the imagination. Obviously, it's way too soon to be talking about that, but 6 months from now, if they stay together and work at it, I know those players. I've watched them play at multiple DreamHacks and everything else down the years, and lots of Danish lands. I know they can be amazing. So I want to see it unfold, but I'm like you. I'm not on a hype train about it. I'm just curious, and I think that's kind of like the right level to pitch it at. As well as that, what else did we have in the news? I guess it's probably worth talking about the Pimp things. We already alluded to it. So the rumors are that Pimp has signed with SK.
Okay.
So this would rule him out from the great NA adventure. I don't know if it's been completed yet. I know he was in talks with SK. I don't really know how to feel about this because it just feels like SK Gaming is just like some fucking revolving door of second string Danish talent. And in fact, actually, it could be third string talent because of Dignitas is meant to be the second string. So I don't know if it's a good move for him. It feels weird that after Dignitas, he's not going to a team of equal parity. He's not going to a better team. This is an amazing player. This is a player, if we went back 3 to 6 months, everyone would have bit your hand off if you were offering Pimp. But now, you know, he's in SK, and we know that they've had problems. So talk is it could be, I think he's coming in for Cadian. This is the rumor. I don't know if it's true. But again, I mean, Cadian's only been in SK for a short period of time anyway. So we end up back in this ridiculous situation where there's no stability. So what do you think of that? I mean, I've got to be honest. That almost feels like a placeholder move for Pimp. Like, no disrespect to SK Gaming, but I think he can do better.
That's just desperation. He obviously just had no good offer from anyone vaguely better because he would have taken it almost certainly. I mean, he does get to play with other Danes. That's obviously an upside, but that's exactly the sort of team where when he first got kicked from Dignitas, he didn't want to have to join and go play the third best Danish team. I mean, he's the guy who's trying to make the second best Danish team into the best Danish team. So he's set further back on his path there. I mean, SK is an okay team. Like, they have Modi, who's been doing okay, who's come back recently. I've been playing with them a bit. The problem is they are really just like third string talent, though. And if anyone gets good, they're going to go off to Dignitas or TSM, you feel like. So it's hard to know what the future is of that team. Like, I can't see how he can play for that team and they can become a top team. I don't think it's going to happen for them. And also, SK as an org has a history of kind of skimping on being willing to sign players and pay big salaries. So I don't see how you improve in that respect. So I think probably best case scenario, he plays there, shows he's good again, then goes to a top team, or he just disappears into mediocrity and obscurity.
Yeah. And the final serious piece of news, let's talk about the new nuke. It's dropping very soon with the next 24 hours or so. What do you think about this, the return of nuke? Are you excited to see it back potentially in the competitive map pool?
I don't know what they've changed, but I have always thought nuke was a good map. To me, nuke, the whole thing with nuke can be summarized by also the argument that happens when people talk about the map pool and say it's boring. If you think nuke's boring and you think the map pool's boring, then actually you think Counterstrike is boring. So fuck off and get your own hobby. People who like Counterstrike would like to play Counterstrike and a map like nuke, which is designed in a special, extremely hard way to emphasize certain aspects of CS, which, yes, aren't as sexy as running in and getting a 5-man on Dust 2, but emphasize a different element of team play to win those rounds. So I've always loved nuke, the old version. I'm not sure what they'll change because obviously the train update was pretty drastic, but one thing I do hope, though, is even though it's a map I liked, I don't want them to do what they've done in other tournaments, which is just bring it back and then suddenly there's a tournament 3 days later that has to use that map and nobody's played it. I want them to use it in online leagues and use it in other tournaments and then gradually tell us like 2 months from now we're going to introduce it at this tournament, and then people have time to play it. Because, for example, remember when Train came back? We now know Train's a good map, but it was a train wreck, as in no teams were playing it. The only teams that would play it were ones who had some weird, fucked up strategy that if you let them play it, they'd have a smoke you didn't know. And it was just gimmicky. It wasn't good Counterstrike, and it did not exhibit high-level play. So it took a while. I'd rather they had a gradual way of like integrating these maps, not just dropping them on us and forcing us to play them, especially because we know the majors months away. So maybe like build it more towards in the build up to the majors when we'll start playing it in tournaments.
And a final piece of news. Okay. And this is a big one, Duncan. I really wanted to ask you about this. So on HLTV today, they posted some news. And I'm wrecked every time I look at it.
Okay.
So there's a team called Torpedo Gaming.
Yeah.
And they've got a player whose real name is Simon Storm, which sounds like a superhero.
Yeah. Remember the Fantastic Four?
Yeah, exactly. It's such an unbelievable name.
It's a wicked name.
Player name? Downey, of course. Simon Downey Storm.
Interesting. Not from the NA scene, you say, though? Not from the NA scene.
No.
Because I figured there's a lot of Downies in the NA scene, right? Am I wrong?
I just can't believe that there's a player called... You've got the coolest fucking name in the world. Your parents are fucking rocking it, dude. What the fuck? Like, why are you called fucking... Why has he done that? What cultural reference does it have in Sweden that I don't get?
Maybe that's our mistake, Rich. Our mistake is I'm going around calling people cunts. I'll just call them Downies. Just an affectionate name that people give themselves. Maybe that's what someone could say to me, Rich. Downey is not a person with Down syndrome. He is my friend who plays for Torpedo. That's what some edgelord from Sweden could say to me.
It's just fucking unbelievable. One of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. But I shout out to him because I've been laughing about that all fucking day, and I did need some cheering up. So let's close this show. Just to say, obviously, we're going to be still doing the show. All of the fallout and all of the negative attention from events at DreamHack certainly isn't going to impact on that. By the numbers is obviously going to continue. As is,
if anything, it'll only get bigger, Rich. And one day we'll be getting so much money from Alphadraft, we won't even do events, and all the events can suck our dick because we'll just be wrecking them with how they're getting anally raped all the time, and we won't even have to go from our houses. It'll be a utopia, right?
Anally raped again, Duncan. Honestly, bro, I love you, man. You gotta see a fucking therapist or something. It's time. Take some of that six Skrilla, go and lie on a couch and talk to the fucking doctor, man. Because like, there's just too much bumming.
The thing is, though, if I went to the therapist, he'd be like, tell me about your childhood. I'd be like, well, it was very difficult. We didn't have a lot of money back then. You know, I used to try and do my best in school, but I wasn't getting much results from it. But you know where I can get a lot of money from now, and things are quite easy? Alphadraft. Have you ever played there, mate? You know anything about fantasy esports? Yeah. It's seamless. I'm too good at it. I'm seamless.
This therapy session was brought to you by Alphadraft. This repressed, horrible childhood memory was brought to you by Alphadraft. It's just, you got to honestly just sort that out, because it's a worrying trend to keep that meme alive. Anyway, have you got any content coming out soon?
I'll probably have some CSGO stuff. I mean, I'll do my world rankings. I actually forgot to update them. I'll probably do them like in the next day or so, since there's been a bunch of events now. I've got some profile pieces on CSGO players that might be coming later this week that I've got like custom artwork for. I haven't done many in CSGO because I've been so busy with league work, but now that I've got some time at home, I'm going to devote some time to getting more CSGO stuff out to balance out the league stuff.
Right, good to know. And obviously, just on a personal note, I'm obviously still going to be doing CSGO stuff, despite all of the drama. And to all the people that have been tweeting, support. I don't know if support is the right way, but obviously we'll all put it behind us and we'll just move on, and it'll be some curious little anomaly in the same way when we don't see Duncan on a desk for ESL. You probably won't see me on a desk at DreamHack, but there's no need for it to be a big deal every time it occurs. And indeed, a lot of fans and supporters have been tweeting me pretty funny things that I probably shouldn't laugh at. Someone tweeted at me during the show saying you should rename the show By the Throat, sponsored by Alpha Man. So shout out.
Fucking hell, mate. He should tell you what. I've got a job for him. Would you like a job writing OJ Berg's jokes? Like, all you have to do is write them on a little card, and then he'll read them out on air for you. Oh no, Sean Charles. Maybe that's what I meant.
Yeah,
Either way, they're the same person.
At
the end of the day, they can go and join Torpedo for all I care.
Anyway, with that said, thanks to Alphadraft. Thanks to Alphadraft for the support and enabling us to bring you this Counterstrike podcast. In a way, that means we don't have to compromise what we're saying and compromise our edgy humor. Although I resolve we are going to try and get Thorin the counseling he so clearly needs. But thanks to them. And indeed, if you want to show your support to them, you go to alphadraft.com, sign up, start playing some games, win fantasy esports, make Skrilla like Thorin. And maybe one day you could be sat in a chair talking bollocks for mad money. Anyway, without any further ado, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks a lot for watching. And until next time, may all your drafts be alpha. See you next week.